Episode 73, May 30 to June 27, 1915. Moving Letters from an Anzac Dugout by General Sir John Monash. Read by Tim Pearce. Of General Sir John Monash, Captain Liddell Hart, the well-known military critic, wrote, "He probably had the greatest capacity for command in modern war among all who held command. A citizen soldier, by profession a civil engineer, General Monash commanded the 4th Australian Infantry Brigade in Gallipoli, and the following extracts from letters written to his wife and daughter while on the Peninsula bear witness to his deep admiration for the sterling qualities of his troops. Anzac, May 30, 1915. Now that I am back, I am free to say that the time I spent with Ian Hamilton was at Imbros Harbour on the RMS Acadian. I learned that I was the very first officer of the whole Mediterranean expedition who had been honoured by a personal invitation. On my return to Anzac yesterday, I learned to my pleasure that I had been mentioned in dispatches. About 20 in all of my brigade, including HQ and the 4 battalions, have been so mentioned, and I dare say some of them will get decorations. They gave Bridges, Major General William Bridges, mortally wounded in the field, his KCB after his death. This morning we had another tough fight. The position at Anzac lies in the form of a rough triangle. Our front is divided into 4 sections, of which mine is section number 3 at the salient or apex of the triangle. Number 1 is held by the 3rd Brigade, number 2 by the 1st, number 3 by the 4th, and number 4 by the New Zealand Brigade. Owing to its position at the head of Monash Valley, the name given to the main valley running up the triangle, this salient is subject to constant attacks day and night. At 3 o'clock this morning, we usually wake and stand to arms at 3:30, the Turks fired a mine just under number 3 trenches in my central post, known as Quinn's Post, and wrecked a group of trenches. They followed this up with a shower of bombs, and about 100 of them rushed this portion of the trench. It took us 2 hours to get them out with bayonet, rifle, artillery and bombs. Only 17 were got out alive. The rest were killed, as were also at least another 100 who counterattacked. The 13th Battalion was manning the post at the time, supported by the 15th, and both did splendidly. Burnage, Lieutenant Colonel J.G. Burnage, was hit by a bomb and had both arms wounded. This is the first casualty among my COs. Major Quinn was killed. Although worn out with 5 weeks of this trench warfare, the men behaved like heroes. Their battle discipline is perfect. They never flinch and never hesitate. We've got our battle procedure now thoroughly well organised. To a stranger, it will probably look like a disturbed ant heap with everybody running a different way, but the thing is really a triumph of organisation. There are orderlies carrying messages, staff officers with orders, lines of ammunition carriers, water carriers, bomb carriers, stretcher bearers, burial parties, first aid men, reserves, supports, signallers, telephonists, engineers, digging parties, sandbag parties, periscope hands, pioneers, quartermasters parties, and reinforcing troops running about all over the place. Apparently in confusion, but yet everything works as smoothly as on a peace parade, although the air is thick with clamour and bullets and bursting shells and bombs and flares. The remarkable intelligence and initiative of the men are most helpful. Most of my officers are now men who have been promoted from the ranks for gallantry in action, and they are really fine. Also they are humane and gentlemanly fighters. I saw a sight today which is to the eternal credit of Australian soldiers. After we had retaken the temporarily lost trenches, we found about 16 or 17 Turks in a sap both ends of which we held. The men might have easily killed the lot, but they waited while an interpreter was sent for and the Turks were persuaded to surrender, all while the men's blood was up and they had seen their mates blown to bits by these very men. But this was not all. Scarcely had these Turks been disarmed and lined up to be searched when our boys crowded round them with water bottles and biscuits, which they devoured ravenously, and then gave them cigarettes and all the while lines of stretcher bearers were carrying past our dead and wounded. Gallantry can surely touch no higher pinnacle. Had they set upon these beaten men and bayoneted them to death, no one could have greatly wondered after the death and torture they had spread amongst us. It was touching, too, to see the gratitude of the wretched prisoners, who wept copiously and kissed our hands. One old fellow went on his knees and made a long speech to me in Turkish, with many salams and gestures of homage. The public of Australia will never fully understand the admiration which all the British sailors and soldiers have for our troops. As I write this letter in my dugout, I am looking out on a hillside which contains the bivouac of the 14th Battalion, where the men have been living for 5 weeks in squalor and dirt, in rain and shine, and most of them in rags. Yet they are laughing and singing and joking and indulging in chaff and horseplay until it is their turn again tomorrow to face the awful ordeal of the trenches for a 48 hours relief. There is only one epithet that comes to the lips of every general who has come into our lines, and that is, "You splendid fellows." And this good spirit of soldierly endurance feeds and grows upon itself. Reserve Gully, Anzac Code, June 7, 1915. Did I write in any of my letters about the armistice? This took place on May 24. It really began on May 22 by a hearing from a trench about 50 yards in front of what is known as Courtney's Post. During a lull in the firing, cries of "Docteur, Docteur," and the waving of a red crescent flag, I sent out Dr. McGregor and Dr. Loffred with an orderly carrying a Red Cross flag, and instantly from all over the places sprang up Turks out of their trenches waving white flags, white rags, and red crescent pennants. The doctors called back that the enemy wanted an armistice for the burying of their dead. At this time there were quite 5,000 of the dead lying in front of our trenches. So I asked for a staff officer to come forward, and a very smart young Turkish officer, smartly dressed, came up and spoke in very good French. I told him I had no power to treat, that this would have to be arranged between the Army Corps commanders and with proper articles of armistice, that his commander had better send an accredited parlementaire under a white flag along the beach from Gaba Tepe to meet our parlementaire halfway to discuss the matter. This was at 4:30, and I gave them 10 minutes to get all their men back into their trenches or we should fire on them. That same night General Birdwood sent out a letter to General Lyman von Sanders, practically repeating the terms of my offer, and sure enough, next day a meeting took place and drew up an agreement for an armistice from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on May 24. It would take too long to describe all the details of it. Suffice it to say that the Turks observed all the rules most punctiliously, even better than we did. I'll give you one instance of this. While I was up on Pope Hill with General Godley, Major General Sir Alexander Godley, commanding Anzac Division, we noticed a Turk about 100 yards away trying to repair a loophole in a Turkish trench. We signed to a Turkish officer pointing to it, and he at once understood and ran over to the man and gave him a sound belting with a stick. He then returned to us and, still in sign language with a polite salute, expressed his regrets at the stupidity of the soldier, and then very politely intimated that he would esteem it a favour if we refrained from using our field glasses, because of course doing so would give us an unfair advantage. The burying went on all day, and precisely at 5 we were all at it again, hammer and tongs, and now there are several thousand more of their dead for them to bury. Anzac, June 22, 1915. I am the only brigadier of the whole crowd at Anzac who has not been disabled in some way. Brigadier General H.N. McLaurin killed, Lieutenant General Honourable Sir J.W. Mackay wounded in the knee, Major General E. Sinclair McLaughlin completely knocked out with nerve strain, Lieutenant General Sir H. Shove has pleurisy, Hughes has ptomaine poisoning, and Brigadier General F. Johnson has a touch of mild enteric. So I am the only brigade commander who has kept going since the beginning without a break. I eat very sparingly, drink only boiled water, and take plenty of exercise, so that I never feel either discomfort or fatigue. The weather is now very warm, although the nights are deliciously cool, but the flies are dreadful, and make life between 11 and 4 a real burden. We managed to make ourselves fairly comfortable in our bivouacs. My home is a hole in the side of the hill, about 6 feet by 7 feet and 4 feet deep. The sides are built up with sandbags, and the roof consists of 3 waterproof sheets lashed together. Biscuit boxes serve as tables, chairs, cupboards, and other furniture. I have my valise to sleep on and get a daily bath out of a canvas bucket with a sponge, and at rare intervals a dip in the sea. We dine in the open, and our cook, now that we have an occasional issue of flour, does us quite well. Anzac, June 27, 1915. For the birthday greetings which I know are on the way from you all, I send an anticipation my very grateful thanks. Although I know your thoughts are with me today, and that you will be worrying because my 50th birthday will be left without celebration, yet I am sure it will please you to know that I have by no means been forgotten. The fact got out somehow, and General Godley sent me a birthday cake, cooked by Lady Godley, who is running a convalescent home in Alexandria. All my CEOs lined up at my dugout at 6 a.m. to congratulate me and shake my hand. The Army Service Corps sent me a present of tobacco and matches, a most welcome gift. Wooden matches at 1 shilling a small box. Norman Young gave me a bottle of champagne. 14th Battalion sent collective greetings, and the headquarters cook scoured around and prepared for me a specially sumptuous 4-course dinner. All day long officers from near and far came to wish me happy returns, so that with the feeling that I have earned the good wishes of so many people, I have really had a very happy birthday under the circumstances. One of my company commanders in the 13th Battalion was field officer for the day and had to go around the bivouacs to inspect the cleanliness. We're all so crowded in this steep valley that the companies and battalions are somewhat mixed up. He came upon a quartermaster's store and kitchen. "Disgraceful," quoth he. "Never saw such a mess. Don't your platoon commander supervise you? What must your company commander be thinking of? Don't he come near you to see such a mess? What company do you belong to?" The terrified cook stared blankly at him. "Can't you answer me? What company do you belong to?" "Yours, sir," said the cook.
Brother Bertie went away to do his bit the other day, with a smile on his lips and his lieutenant lips upon his shoulder, bright and gay. As the train moved out, he said, "Remember me to all the birds," though he wagged his paw and went away to war, shouting out these pathetic